Hi everybody, welcome to the One Step Beyond COVID-19 webinar. We've got representatives from the Workspace SIG, as well as Technology SIG and the People SIG as well. So today we're going to very much focus on what does next look like. So from the next, I guess it's looking at how we collaborate, how we are going to kind of have meetings in different maybe locations. Is that going to be in the office? Is it going to be away from the office? Are we going to go back to that kind of coffee shop working? And is that where we will have meetings in the future? We're going to look at flexibility and control as well as hyper personalization, and ultimately looking at the fluidity as well of the business. How can we look at that business continuity planning and make sure that it is fit for as we go into the future. We're then going to kind of just quickly move into the lessons learned and then the role of FM. And it sounds like we've got a lot to cover, but I guess today is what we want to do is have a really decent kind of panel discussion, and there'll be a follow-up where ultimately we will do a guidance document, collect any questions and any themes, and we'll pump some information out afterwards and look out on LinkedIn and things as well. All the way through this, please submit some questions. We'll work through them as we go, and we'll also have some time at the end as well. So yeah, the more questions, the merrier, because we want to make this as interactive as possible. So just to give you a bit of insight, I guess, as to what the Workspace SIG does. I mean, ultimately, we're focusing on the workspace. How can we make sure that it's driving that employee experience right for the business? From a technology point of view, it's effective. And what we are here to ultimately do is build that community, share some expertise, help kind of guide people that are kind of maybe sat there thinking, what does next look like? So we're here to help and support as much as possible. Between us, we've got probably far too many years of experience, and that's just probably a couple of us. And hopefully we can share some of that. We've definitely not all got the answers. We'd never sit there and say that, but it's all about knowledge sharing, and that's what we're here to do. From a Workspace SIG perspective, we are recruiting for volunteers as well. So if you are interested, just drop an email over to communities@iwfm.org.uk. and that'd be great. I'm just going to let everybody introduce themselves. So firstly, Claire, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Claire Hollister. I've got 20 years experience in UK and global professional services, and for the last 3 years I've been an independent consultant helping organisations improve their people-focused operations. The internal operations and the operating environment of a business massively influence the engagement, effectiveness and well-being of staff. So think about performance management process that thrives on negativity, or the office with no windows or wobbly chairs. Think about engagement of the staff working in those environments. They're probably not delivering their best work and they're unlikely to stay very long. The real impact of the workplace on staff engagement, effectiveness and well-being came to me when I was gifted an office relocation project, and I realised that the decisions that I made, both small and large, have a massive impact on the people that I worked with for the coming years. So I believe, as I guess many of you do, that there'll always be a requirement for a central company location, a hub or an office, where people can meet face to face, not all the time, not for every aspect of their work, but this personal interaction is so much richer than the technology-led interactions that we're living by today. They're so important for the health and the well-being and effectiveness, not only of the individuals, but for the business as well. So for me, COVID-19 doesn't mean that we have to stop using offices and workplaces. It's just another factor that we have to consider in the discussions about what space we need, where we need it, and how we use it. So we really need to start thinking just one step beyond COVID. See what I did there? Back to Simone.
And then over to you, Dan.
Thanks, Simone. Yeah, Dan Wakelin. I'm a workplace consultant. I work with organisations on their workplace strategy and change management. For me, I think today is just a really timely discussion, as we've been hearing latest government guidelines about working from home as much as we can. it has forced us to think about the long term. We've been given a clear direction that actually this could be a 6-month solution, and it has forced us away from thinking about the immediate impact and into something a little bit longer term. And the things that we're talking about today, it seems to me, are actually the real challenges that organisations are starting to think about, the long-term impacts of COVID. So really excited to have this conversation with everyone today.
Yeah, thanks. Then Robin? I hate to say it, but I think you're on mute, Robin. One of us had to get it in.
Well, I was going to say one of us had to do it. So my name's Robin Stevens. I'm a member of the People Management Special Interests Group, and have been a member of IWFM for a number of years now, and found it to be a great professional organisation to belong to. My day job is business director working for a company called Arcadis, who have a large and diverse team delivering FM consultancy across the UK. But my personal focus is predominantly on local, central government and defence. I think my experience in the last 8 months has both been internal and external facing, helping my team support clients, but also our internal teams. And whilst understandably the focus tends to be on the negatives around the pandemic, I genuinely believe as FM professionals there's been a positive step change in how we work and how we are seen by organisations. And whilst we can't ignore the negatives, we should harness the positives and make sure we make them sort of stick and stay with us. The pandemic has sped up organisations' understanding that we don't have to all be in one place 5 days a week. We can use the technology that's at our fingertips to work more efficiently. On the flip side, how do we not lose the obvious numerous benefits that occur simply by being in the same place together as colleagues, with customers and clients? Just really looking forward to listening to other people's views on what we're going to talk about today. So thank you.
And we've got Yemi.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. I'm Yemi Akimomi. I work with Jones Lang LaSalle, and I head up the asset performance and optimization service line. Also a member of the technology special interest group, and I double up with the Workspace special interest group. So there's a good blend.
I think you're on mute, Yemi.
Sorry, yeah, I had to go wrong again. So yeah, I don't know what had I been on mute for a long time, or should I sort of start again? Yeah.
We got from the JLL bit, and then it
right. Okay. Yeah. So what I've been doing over the past few years is really understanding, how the physical workplace, how it impacts on the people. Because again, FM is really about the people, the people business. So everything that we do, the technology, the services we offer, the spaces, well-being, etc., is all about the people. And I think it's really excited to really understand, how COVID has impacted, on workplace strategy, how it's impacted on the well-being of people, and how we can use technology, user spaces to really enhance the productivity of the people. So again, great to be here. Looking forward to the conversations, and yeah, for me, it's really about performance and optimization, and thinking about people being the greatest asset the organizations have. How can we help them perform better, and how can we optimize the opportunities for them within the workplace?
Yeah, and I'll just quickly introduce myself because I was supposed to do that at the beginning. So I'm Simone Fenton Jarvis. So I'm the consultancy director over at Rico UK. I'm the chair of the Workspace Special Interest Group. So I'm going to take the role of moderating this lovely bunch of people today. Well, I guess, just to give a bit of context as to why we've got maybe people, SIG and technology here, just in case it's kind of not obvious to everybody. Just going to share the screen again. But, ultimately looking at, the culture, the technology, the workspace, how people work, what tools that they use, where they work, ultimately that is the workplace. And I think that's why it was important for us to get representatives from each of the SIGs on today's call, and hopefully this is the start of all the SIGs kind of working together to solve that kind of workplace equation, I guess, because it's the more collaboration that happens between them workplace areas and avoid them silos, the better it is for everybody. So I guess, just moving into some of our kind of themes now, firstly, we've got collaboration. And I guess a question for you, Dan, if we're looking at what meaningful collaboration means for people, what does that mean for you and, some of the customers that you work with?
Yeah, it's, I think we are really missing out on the more informal, unplanned collaboration while we're all working remotely. We've heard from an awful lot of people that actually the things that they're missing are those conversations that happen over a desk, or the bumping into people, the water cooler moments, serendipity. Those are the things that we're struggling to replicate in a virtual world. And actually, a lot of organizations rely on those sorts of communication, it seems. Those informal networks are actually the way that we get messages out to people and we keep everybody informed, and that's how we as individuals start to understand the bigger picture about our organization from the things that we overhear. So it seems to me that those are the things that we want to get back, but I think there's a challenge in that as well, isn't there? Because if they are unplanned, if they are ad hoc, how do we plan our time so that we're coming into a physical space to have these interactions? By that very nature, we're suddenly making them planned. So there's a bit of a contradiction there that I think we've got to unpick.
Yeah, we can't plan the unplanned, can we, I guess? And it's, from your side of things, Claire, I know you do a lot with kind of various HR departments and things as well, but maybe, how would you suggest that people kind of do the planned, unplanned kind of bumping in, moments where you would have, between the water cooler and the coffee machine and things? What are your kind of top tips on that front?
And the problem is, as you say, you can't plan the unplanned moment. But what you can do is just keep talking to people. And I think it's very easy for people sitting at home in rooms, as we all are, to feel a little bit more isolated and get a little bit more insular. And you kind of need to make that little bit more of an effort to talk to people. And if you talk to people, then the collaboration comes either through technical positions like this, or by having other collaborations in different locations, which we'll talk about coming up. But I think it's just making that effort. You can no longer accidentally bump into people unless there's a big technology problem, of course. We don't really want to think about that. But it is about talking, I think, and just keep talking to people. And anybody within the organisation is good.
Yeah, I guess that's good for people that are kind of in the organisation. They know people, but I guess the challenge is going to be, as more and more organisations move forward, the onboarding process. How are we going to, I guess, onboard people in an environment that they build them relationships, and yet try and have planned meetings and build them relationships in a world that might be quite dispersed? Any thoughts?
I think I'll just take that one again. I think it comes down to one of these planned things, and I know of organisations at the moment where one of the primary reasons for opening up their office locations is for onboarding, because they want people to meet people, so that they plan to do that, so that they have that initial immersion, and then they can go out, and it makes the future communication a little bit easier, because you know a few people, and once you know a few people, you can start to know a bit more. But I think to do that remotely is possible. And there's been many people that have started in new organisations and their onboarding has been through circumstances like this. But I think to be really effective, you need to get some face-to-face interaction and work out how best you can plan that.
Yeah, I guess we need to look at them people in the organisation that are the kind of the sociable super connectors that seem to know everything and know everybody, and almost buddy newbies up with them type of people, and try and kind of indoctrinate them into the organisation and the culture and the values of the organisation, I guess, isn't it? It's a couple of interesting challenges ahead. But I guess, as we, talking about meetings, I guess it's easier for us for certain knowledge workers, I guess, to sit on Zoom calls all day. But just because we can, I guess, doesn't mean that we should. So I guess a question for you, Robin, if you're looking forward, from meetings and where we would have meetings, if we're going to have face-to-face meetings, would they be in the office? Would they be in a different location? Or can you see yourself just sticking with virtual? What do you think?
Yeah, I think we're probably all clear that meetings in offices, as we've experienced it for however many years, is going to reduce. And I think organisations were already looking at reducing their footprint, reducing the travel, reducing the impact on people's lives by having to go into central London, for example. Hundreds of thousands of people every day going into London. So I think what the pandemic has done is sped that up. It's got organisations looking at their technology, etc., and sort of trying to improve their people's lives. I think we've seen studies in the past where different surroundings away from the office reduce some of those distractions that happen in the office. Greater focus on the need of having the meeting. So rather than going into an office and going into a meeting room, you've actually got to put the effort into going into meetings, and making sure we're getting good outputs to increase productivity and sort of elevate the focus. But there are downsides to that. You lose that ability to potentially have that corporate feel of going into an office and having meetings. How do you deal with confidentiality? How do you deal with behaviours? So there's lots of things that we've got to learn or learn in a different way. In addition to that, I think a lot of us in the past have used coffee shops and restaurants maybe to have a meeting. What other properties on the high street will reinvent themselves to offer us the ability to meet colleagues in totally different places that we're not even thinking about at the moment? So I think there's something there that could happen. And I think finally, from my perspective, it's about we've seen so many people re-engage with the great outdoors. And whilst the climate, and particularly today as I look out the window, is not conducive with having that meeting outside, I know that I've had a lot of meetings, even when I was in the office, one-to-one, by going to a park or walking around the block. And actually, that creates better conversations and more open conversations by not being in a meeting room or in an office.
Yeah, I'll give you a little interesting fact just to throw one in there. I was watching a Netflix documentary a few weeks ago, like you do in the middle of the pandemic, and it turns out that the mafia actually do walking meetings because they know that it's more private. No bugs and stuff. So that was very interesting. So don't worry about privacy. It's good enough for the mafia. I won't argue with it. A question's come in from the audience about, we know importance of face-to-face meetings, but then how I guess there's certain things, like I'd love to do a face-to-face meeting at the moment with a couple of my customers and even my colleagues, but how do we do that in the world but still protect ourselves from COVID ultimately? So I know we kind of want to focus on that one step beyond COVID, but an immediate practicality, any tips of how to do that meeting, but still maintain the distancing and the ventilation, I guess, that we require? Choose a sunny day.
Yeah, open spaces. Yeah.
I know a lot of organisations are opening their offices up, and I know we're opening one of our offices on Monday, and predominantly that's about our people's welfare, those people that need to get away from home in the nicest possible way. They're in a room in a house and everyone else is not working or whatever, but also for that meeting. And if we keep people that don't need to be there away from the office, then actually we can use the space we've got to have those good meetings with only the people that need it, and introduce booking systems and things like that to enable people to have meetings that they need to have with the social distancing and all the other measures in place.
Yeah. I guess as we look at the coffee shop kind of working, I mean, maybe a question for you, Yemi, is what do you think, our kind of high streets and town centres might look like in the future if we're all kind of working from home? working more locally? You know, what's that going to do to, I guess, like London? What do you think?
Yeah, yes, whilst no one really has a crystal ball to look far to the future, but at least in the past 6 months, we could see a lot of trends. And I think one direct impact, of COVID, which we all know, is the acceleration of the digital and online presence. I was just reading an article, was it yesterday, that talked about, I think TSB shutting down about 164 branches in the UK, just because they're moving, that service online. And what you find, I think what I can easily see, in the next, few years, lots of the big brands disappearing on the high streets, and particularly retail. I mean, we know the retail market's really been hit hard. But again, looking at trends, there's still high rental demand for residential. There's going to be a lot of mixed use schemes coming up. We're going to be seeing a lot more residential developments coming through. Again, we've talked about, the opportunities for more co-working, more sort of informal spaces for working. I'm sure it'll give rise an opportunity for more local brands, to offer up outlets where people can both socialize and work. I remember going to Cafe Nero last week, and it almost looked like a WeWork. I went in for a coffee, but there were at least 10 people in there, doing work, and they were there for a few hours. And I thought, and I think that's what we'll see more of, And again, with technology, the likes of 5G, there'll be more open air collaborative spaces, big parks, people actually going there for a few hours doing work. So I think generally, it'll move away from what it is now to a lot more collaborative, spaces, corporate mixing with, residential, a lot less commercial, but a lot more informal type of, offerings, which would help support both, living, well-being, as well as working. So that's sort of my thoughts.
Yeah, I noticed that actually my bank has now got a co-working space that they started putting in the ground floor of it. And I think that's, when else would you have met a colleague or a customer at a bank? Maybe a way to get them to pay an invoice, I don't know. But it's maybe something that shift, I guess, that we're seeing, that it's, it comes back to choice, doesn't it? And we've been saying it for quite a while. We want choice. We work where we work. And I think, on that front, if it's all about choice, if we've got somebody that is, I guess you could look at the digital native, digital immigrant kind of scenarios. If you have got somebody that wants to work face to face in an office, then you've got somebody that is happy to stay on Teams at home. Claire, what do you think? How do we give people enough flexibility, but then make sure that they are seeing the people they need to see in the way that works best for them?
I think there's a couple of things at play here, because I think to have the maximum personal flexibility causes some problems. So I've spoken to quite a few people that are more than happy to work predominantly at home, but they want to go into the office for 1 or 2 days a week so they can catch up with people, which is great. But the personal flexibility means that when you rock up at the office, who else is there? Are the people there that you want to? Maybe everybody has chosen that day to work from home and there's nobody else there other than you. So when you have that real personal flexibility, it doesn't work, because you're just doing your own thing in your own space. So I think you need to, again, it comes back to communication and planning, which is not dissimilar. If you wanted to meet up with somebody in the old world, you'd look at meeting room bookings and you would plan and organise it. And you need to do that same thing now. But I think the plan and organise it has to recognise that you might have somebody in an office, you might have somebody on a Zoom meeting sitting at home, and you might even have somebody just dialing in from somewhere. So the individual flexibility needs to come together, and it can do. Technology is very supportive in that. But I think we can't just assume that I can just turn up at the office and everybody will be there that I want to see, because those days are probably gone, because more and more people want to adopt that kind of personal flexibility. So particularly, Robin, you mentioned in London with the commuting and everything, and I think we will be see some differentials between the big city areas where there's a big commuting factor, and maybe the slightly town places. And I again, talking to somebody the other week, You know, we've got offices in central London that are opened up, and they get a few people in there more for health and well-being. And there's an office outside the city which is pretty much fully occupied. Everybody wants to be in the office. Everybody wants to work, and because they can drive or walk or cycle, they're quite happy to do that. And I think, again, the flexibility is for everybody, but it is about communication and planning to get the most out of it.
Because I guess you wouldn't have turned up to a meeting room in the old days without telling people, you know, where to go and what time and what room to be in. So I guess it's probably finding a way through that, having a mixture of that kind of water cooler moments to making sure that people are where you need them to be. I think a crucial bit as well is that, you know, how will we enable people to work where and how. I think one thing I have seen a rise of is people requesting kind of Zoom rooms, and I think it's to make sure that if people do want to work from home or anywhere else, but there's people in the office that actually can still collaborate in a way that works for them, rather than one person, a 10-person meeting room. So has anybody else seen anything else like that? Not yet. So we'll have to update people when that starts happening, I guess. And I think, you know, we've got used to working in a way, in a certain way, and you can see all the lovely plants behind Dan here. You know, with hyper personalised space. How do we do that when people want to come to the office? How do we bring, you know, some of them things from the home environment back to the office space?
Yeah, I think there's two parts to this one, isn't there? There is the hyper personalization while we are in the office. So actually having an improved variety of work settings. So this isn't about sort of call centers and having banks and banks of desks. This is about having choice and, really importantly, having the trust in people to make sensible choices about the appropriate places for them to do their best work. So it's having that mixed economy whilst we're in the office. But I think as well, this comes back to Claire's point earlier about our personalised approach can be made up of a whole range of different spaces. So I think when we start to think about workplace in the future, we might need to broaden our definition of it. And actually, it's no longer just the environments that are owned or leased by our employers. It's also now our homes. It is the coffee shops. It is co-working spaces. We're going to have this distributed working approach. And so actually those of us who are thinking about what the workplace looks like and trying to create a great workplace experience, we've actually got to step outside too of those owned and leased environments and think about all of the environments that people work in and how we kind of create that excellent experience for people in whatever space they choose to work in.
Yeah, there was something on LinkedIn yesterday that I saw around somebody saying that a company talking about doing home visits every so often to see what kind of environment that people are working in. And I guess we've got to tread a very thin line here, haven't we? Because everyone's experiences are very different. And I think somebody in a one-bed flat is going to have a very different experience to someone out in the suburbs, whatever. So I think, you know, how we're going to tread that line of making sure that the environment's safe for people from an ergonomics point of view, and, you know, things are pack tested and, you know, all that kind of thing, to then making sure that it's productive for them. You know, any ideas what the challenges there that we're going to come up against and how we can come over them?
It's a really good point, Simone, because the analogy that I heard a lot at the start of this pandemic was, you know, we're all in the same boat. Well, actually, we're not. We're all in the same storm. Our boats are different. Some of us have got really fancy, some of us have got little tin things full of rust and we're paling out water. So actually, it is a different experience for different people. I think actually this is where the trust factor comes in again. Actually, we've got to put our trust in our people to tell us when their environment isn't working for them. But it is, you're right, really difficult. Are we saying in the future that we're going to come into people's homes and assess whether that's an appropriate work environment for them because that's somewhere they've chosen to work? That's really tricky, isn't it? But I think about putting it back to people and saying, we absolutely trust you to shape your work environment so that you are healthy, your well-being is supported, and you can be productive, and actually then, you know, ask them to come forward and tell us what they need from their mix of workspaces.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Dan. And it just to on the back of that, and I think there's also a key role technology has to play in this as well, because I think organizations, if they deploy the right people and analytics software, what they can do is, from people wherever they're working, they can extract data, they can get insights from the people to understand what's working, what isn't working, how's that impacting on health and well-being, productivity, etc. And they can sort of use that data sort of to inform decisions that would help improve the conditions, of the people, and drive strategic decisions, and will help, give more benefit to the workers. And I think there's a lot that can be done there. Yeah.
And maybe it's something that working from home, we know that we can have this hyper personalized environment, but when we go to the office, we know we can have the social side. Do you think there's some compromise to make there, Yemi, like around any of that?
Yeah, I think it's a balance. I think it's giving people the options, because I mean there's some roles that are complex, and some roles will still require you to interact. And we also need to, as well, hyper personalization, has its benefits. People feel more autonomous, people feel more empowered, etc. But the benefit of community, like Claire's point, there's knowledge transfer, there's cohesion, there's that need to cross-pollinate between people. So I think it would always be a case of being able to give people the option where they need to, be in their own space, have their own sort of feel, have their own personalized experiences, yes, but giving them the option with planning, with communication, to be able to interact with others.
Yeah. Just got an interesting question in from Ray. I feel like I'm on a radio station. He's asking if remote work becomes the norm, do you think that employers will ask for corporate branding, things like pop-up banners in the background, less personal statements, and more kind of certain backdrops and dress codes? Do you think that'll become a thing, or will it be more human than that, of you're at your home, we're accepting that you're at your home? Anybody?
That's an interesting point. Yeah,
I think there's got to be some of that, simply because when all of this kicked off, it was all quite humorous in a way. We're all in it together. But as corporate organisations, I just don't think it will be acceptable. That they'll want us to have a background, they'll want us to be dressed in a particular, no different to in the office. I think it will be less than being in the office, but there'll have to be some kind of framework, I would have thought.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm seeing that even with JLL as well. I think in our sort of teams, you already have the backgrounds of the different offices across the globe. And I was in a client meeting once, and you could see all the GL employees, came informal for the meeting, even though it was via Teams, but we all had sort of the GL backdrops, just so that we can, put that corporate image across to the client. I think you start seeing a lot more of those, as we get into the sort of new norm of working.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Robin, go on, Dan.
I think the sort of personalised backdrops are all, really useful and helpful, aren't they? But I think as well, a principle of activity-based working is about appropriateness of location. So actually, if it's appropriate for you to have that branded environment and for it to look really corporate and professional, the office still is a great place to do that. And actually, we don't really want to recreate our offices at home. I don't think there's many of us who want to, blur the line so much that we're living at work and actually we've got a corporately branded bedroom or what have you. So I think actually it is about remembering as well that part of our role as employees is to find the appropriate setting, and that might be the office if that is what our employer wants us to sort of represent, if you like.
Yeah. No, definitely. And Robin, like maybe that element of control, I guess, traditionally in an office environment, there's certain things that we can control and certain things that we can't. What do you think that'll look like going into the future?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think whatever happens, we're going to see people far more in control of where they work, how they work, and when they work. And as you say, the other elements associated with that. I think most of us will know that the more control you give and the more empowerment of people, the more engaged and productive they can be, and the more we get out of them. And it's taken a long time, I think, for organisations. You know, some are far advanced, and others are still back in the dark ages with that empowerment, etc., and that control. And this has sped that up and driven that on. I think we're going to have to work out how that works and put some checks and balances in place. We've got challenges with, so if we allow people to control their working day, and you've got, and I see it day in, day out, you've got the people that get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and start working, and you've got the people at 12 o'clock at night that finish. How do we control that in a positive way? Because in an office environment, potentially you've got a working day that people tend to respect, and then outside of that, it's your personal choice. But what this has done is taken almost that control away from it, and therefore, how do we stop people becoming stressed and under pressure because your boss has just written to you at 8 o'clock at night expecting an answer, forgetting that you're an early person, you start at 6 a.m. in the morning, and by 4 o'clock, you know, you've done your day. You know, so the challenges like that, but also how will our offices, how will we have the flexibility in our offices to replicate what we can now do at home? So we've probably all gained the advantages of you know, being able to adjust the lighting to what suits us, the heating to what suits us. You know, anyone that's in FM, you know, you run a help desk, what are the things? You know, you've got Billy Smith there that's too hot, and you've got Jane Smith there that's too cold, and they're sitting at each other. You know, but we've now got into the luxury position of being able to put a jumper on when we want to, turn the lighting up and down when we want. So all of that kind of thing. You know, how do we control video calls, you know, without sort of, you know, sapping all of that energy and creativity by being on a call from 8 o'clock until 5 o'clock in the evening or whatever. And I think also we've got to look at people's expectations and their people's wants. We've got to understand that to get the best talent and to keep the best, we are going to have to allow people to control more of how they work. The dynamics will change potentially.
Yeah, and I guess with that element of giving people control, it requires trust, doesn't it? And I mean, Claire, thoughts around that, like how can we show people that we trust them?
So this is actually really quite difficult because to one person, their manager ringing up, asking how they are as a general sort of check-in is really nice, and it's kind of the sign of a caring, sharing manager. To somebody on a phone call, why are you checking up on me? Don't you trust me anymore? And so difficult. Again, we talk about that line that we need to be walking. But it's not different to what it was in the old world. And I think what it is all about is managers knowing their people. Different people work different ways, and you need to think about, you know, how would I have shown them that I trust them in the old world? Would I have taken out for coffee and had a conversation with them? Would I have bought them a box of chocolates? What would I have done as a kind of reward or a demonstration of my trust? But you can't really send a cup of coffee in the post. Kind of doesn't work. But is there something you can do that demonstrates that your recognition of what they're doing, that you do trust them, talking to them about how you will be calling them, and it's not because you're checking up on them, it's just because you don't see them anymore, and you want to have that conversation that you used to have when you were making coffee every day. You want to still have a conversation, but you need to kind of do it slightly more formally because you're not bumping into them. So I think it's there are lots of different ways we can do it, but you need to understand your people first, otherwise you could land yourself in some hot water.
Yeah, no,
yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Does anybody else on the panel get anything to add to that? No.
Sorry, this is a bit light-hearted, but there's got to be a business opportunity there about putting a cup of coffee in the post. Just, sorry, lighthearted. But joking aside, how do we sort of almost sort of engage in that way, that lighthearted sort of? My boss actually sent me a Easter egg at Easter. Do you know what? It's a bit of a funny thing to do, but it was quite a nice touch, and I think again we're going to have to start thinking differently about how do we do that. And with Claire saying about that coffee in the post, it sort of really brought it home to me. How to do those little things that you would normally do, but we now can't do.
Yeah, maybe use a delivery service without any delivery services. First find out where they are and then get one delivered.
But I think one thing that also helps as well, which I think we're doing a lot, is just check-ins, just daily or even weekly check-ins. It's not about work, it's a social online. Let's just get together and just chat. If you want to talk about work, then but I think that really, over the past 6 months, that has really helped to tighten the connections between people. Just general half an hour in the diary, let's just talk. Everyone's open, crack jokes. I think that's one way that I think could really help support that.
Absolutely. It all sounds like it's going to be all very fluid going forward. The business to people, a lot of uncertainty. Dan, have you got any top tips around that?
Right, I think this is a really interesting point, isn't it? The fluidity of our planning. So we are absolutely in a place now where we don't want to be committing to big corporate real estate decisions and workplace decisions that just might not suit us in 6 months' time, let alone in 6 years' time. But we've always talked about flexibility, and it's always something that I've struggled with a little bit, because I think from an FM perspective, whenever we hear people talking about flexibility, it always just seems to result in folding partitions. That seems to be our default setting. I actually think we perhaps need to just change the sort of thought a bit here, from flexibility to adaptability and maybe even hackability. So how do we make our workspaces spaces that we can change, that is inexpensive and quick, but we can hack it really easily to suit our needs today or next week?
I really like the idea of that hackability. Saying it a few years ago actually, and someone said, "Oh, don't say that, it sounds cheap." And I said, well, no, if you look at all the kind of startup organizations that have got the agility, it's because it's and I think that I think hopefully long gone are the days where we do a fit out of an office and we go, this is how we're going to work for the next 5 years, and when I get some more capex, I'm going to spend some money and we'll redo the office. And I think then days have gone. Like, what do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you're right. Those days are behind us, aren't they?
Yeah, it's which is that a good thing or a bad thing? A quick vote. What do you think? Yeah, good or bad?
I'll say it's good. I'll say it's good because it gives more opportunity.
Yeah, Claire might have just paused. Dan?
No, I'm finding the mute button. No, I think that the whole hackability and the to take the agility of the small organisations into larger corporates is, I think, what needs to go on. I think the stability of some of the larger corporates is what does need to be adjusted in today's world. And that whole flexibility and fluidity. You can no longer say, oh, I've got my 8,000 square feet or my 80,000 people squeezed into a building and job done. It's kind of changed on a regular basis, particularly, if it's not COVID, something will come along again afterwards. We got over bird flu, we got over swine flu, we weren't really hit by those. COVID has now come. There will be other things that cause us to rethink. And this is just the wake-up call to having that fluidity in the planning.
Yeah, I mean, I remember reading an article, and I think was it HSBC or RBS? They were considering, looking at flexible workplaces that can double up as both a temporary home and office location, for people who are traveling for business. So I think, that agility, hackability, flexibility, there might start being, spaces being converted, swapping between FM space to accommodation space. I mean, you got some offices, again, the typical startups. You got showers, you got kitchens, you got everything, got flexi couches, etc. And Google's a perfect example. You can actually be in the buildings for weeks, without having to leave. So I think it will create a lot more opportunities in the big corporates as that model, those themes tend to drive on further.
I'm going to assume, Dan, you think the hackability is a positive as well?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, Robin, good or bad?
Yeah, good. But I think Yemi brings up a really good point. Isn't it great, Google having all of these things and not being able to get out for 2 or 3 weeks? The sheer thought of that horrifies me. I go to work. I don't want to live and breathe there. So good in general, but I think there's a risk, especially some of the big corporates with big money, that you become you just live it and breathe it even more than we do. It's bad enough now without actually staying there. So I think it's a
Yeah, and Yemi, it feels like FM have been under a bit of a spotlight over the last kind of 8 months or so. I guess we've got a really good opportunity to keep and run with that momentum. Like how are you sure that as a sector that we do take that opportunity? We've talked for years about the seat at the board table and all that kind of stuff. So what would you say to anybody out there now about taking that opportunity to keep that momentum going?
Well, I think it's clear. I mean, the pandemic has really shown that there's a big focus on people, that people are the most important assets to organizations. And it's clear that, FM really is about supporting people, so everything that we do. I mean, look at what we do during the pandemic. Our response to cleaning, everything that happens in the background was all about FM. Again, acceleration in technology, etc. There's so much that FM did, right, to make sure that everything was focused around supporting the people. So I think it's really about, being at the forefront and being, really loud with our voice to say, look, right, we are here to focus and support the people. And that's what FM is all about. There's been big emphasis on health and well-being, again, FM, workplace, strategic, amenities, lifestyle, again, FM, flexibility, agility, it's all FM. Co-working spaces, it's all FM. So I think it's a big opportunity for us, to be at the forefront. Even we talk about technology, I think there's a big, because we understand the people, we understand operation, we understand what is necessary. There's big opportunity for collaboration with tech companies to develop products and solutions that will help drive this improvement. So I think, it's a big opportunity for us, and we just need to take it and run with it, really. Because I think it's clear, right? Everything that's happened in the past 6 months, shows the benefit and the value that FM brings to the table.
Yeah, and Claire, I mean, you sit on that, not on the fence because it's a good place to be, but between that line between FM and HR really well. What do you think FM's role is with that well-being piece?
To me, I think, and Yemi touched on this as well, I think it's brought FM from the background into the foreground very much, and very much FM is a bit of a dirty word. It's a cost center, it's just something to do. But I think now, if you look at FM as it integrates with the front line of the business, because people are asking questions now. When are you cleaning? Why are you cleaning? What are you cleaning? Nobody cared before. It just the fairies came in at midnight and it was clean. And I think now, again, building on what Yemi said, is FM isn't a cost center. It is a real value add. If you use it properly, it's a real value to the business. If you don't, and you just pick them in the corner and just say, can you just clean this occasionally and, oil the air conditioning every now and again, you're not getting your value for money. But I think there is much better opportunity now of fully integrating FM into the working arena on a daily basis.
Yeah, for me, it's that piece around we're there to enable the community bit. I think the more we get our heads around that and how we work with HR and IT and enable that kind of people-centric approach, I think the better it is for everybody, really, isn't it? We've got a few questions coming in. Sorry, Claire, go on.
I was going to say, and again, the link with the people in HR, the office environment, as I touched on before, is a key enabler for employee engagement and well-being and health, well-being, etc. And the provision of that environment is what FM do, and that is what, whoever it comes through, that is so important. Whether it's from the drafts from the air conditioning or the windows that don't open, whatever, but it's critical.
Yeah, absolutely. Got a couple of questions coming in from the audience. If anybody else wants to pop a question in, we've got last kind of 10 minutes now, so feel free. We've got a few questions. So the first one from Yusuf, it's that COVID has got an opportunity for service providers, but there's also a threat to some firms as well. How would that be integrated into the kind of future strategic planning around the threat versus the opportunity, kind of almost that SWOT analysis? What are your thoughts, anybody? So from a service provider kind of point of view.
I think it's both a threat and an opportunity, because the biggest opportunity, if you've got big companies that are just saying we're not going to have our offices in central London, for example, we're going to have some more distributed networks, that's a great opportunity for these organisations. The threat comes from the fact that you having lots of people interchanging in these places gives you a much more onerous FM challenge through the cleaning and everything. But it's not insurmountable. It's different. You're not going to be able to cram in as many people as you might have thought about before. So there's some obviously profitability issues at play there. But I think the model that we're working to has to include some of these office service providers to help give that flexibility and potentially that localized or regionalization that companies will start looking for.
Yeah, and I guess if we all look back, 8 months and even previous to that, we look at our business continuity plans. I don't think anybody would have said what happens when there's a pandemic and everything stops and we must get everybody home within 24 hours. So I guess as we move forward, how will that kind of strategic planning, how will the business continuity plan, how will that have changed for organisations as well? Do you think it's going to come more away from almost the day-to-day things like what happens if there's a leak, a power cut, that kind of thing, to actually the more bigger scale things, what happens if there is a pandemic? Do you think that'll kind of carry into the future, or do you think people kind of rest on the laurels a little bit?
I think it will carry on into the future. I think organisations have realised now that there's a really strong potential that this is not the last time that we're going to be dealing with something like this. But I think something that I found really interesting talking to a client yesterday was we have previously always focused our business continuity thinking around the office. But actually, if we're all going to start working from home a little bit more, if we're going to be working remotely, does our business continuity planning need to extend to that as well? What happens if there's a flood at home instead of in the office, or the internet goes down because BT are digging up the road again? That actually all of a sudden, in the same way I was talking earlier about workplace professionals thinking more broadly about what the physical workspace is, I think that same concept extends to our business continuity planning as well.
Yeah, and it's a question that ties in with that's just coming from John, and he's asked that, do we believe that, we could almost have sat here in March and said, a couple of months it'll all be over, let's get out of the office, we'll go back in the future. He's kind of asking now is, should we seriously look at permanent solutions for the office and for the workplaces to get people back into the workplace, or should we continue to sit on the fence and see what changes, what treatments come, what vaccines come? What are your thoughts around that?
Is it not? I don't think there is a right or wrong answer to that. I think it depends on the organisation and how you're set up and how you deliver your services. And I think every organisation will have to look at themselves and how they're set up and decide on that way forward. No different to all the other conversations we've just had about the business continuity and all the other things. It's going to be business by business looking at it, and the businesses that are going to survive are the ones that sort of build this in to their future, because otherwise, well, we're seeing it now. There's organisations that are not going to be with us because they haven't moved quick enough and they haven't moved in the right way. And you know, I think it was Dan said about our people. You know, that they are the most important thing, and I think it's been a real wake-up call for organisations that talk at times about people, and the reality being that they haven't actually really thought about it. And we've probably all got examples of clients that within 24 hours they were back up and running, and you wouldn't almost know that there was a problem, and others that 3 months later they were still struggling to pay bills and things because they'd only got access to the finance system for one person, or you know. So I think it's crucial to look at it business by business, but those that survive and are successful will be the ones that really understand what's happened and what the future looks like.
And on Dan's comment around, you know, needs today or next week must be incorporated into the organisation strategic plan. Question from Alice is like, how can we ensure that today's needs and tomorrow's needs are considered within that plan? Any thoughts around that? How we future-proof?
I think this is where the idea of hackability and adaptability comes back in, isn't it? Because we just don't know what the future holds. It's impossible for us to plan for every eventuality, but I think what we need to be thinking about is creating spaces that can be changed inexpensively and very quickly, that mean that we can respond in an agile way when changes happen. So it's, you know, it's not about knowing what the future holds and planning for everything. It's about building in the ability to change as quickly as the business does and as quickly as the world does.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And just to end really, and we have got more questions in, obviously we're not going to get through them, but just to end and do a quick summary, 30 seconds, what's your kind of key takeaway for, I guess, from today, from into the future? What does that look like? Claire, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I will. To me, there are a few silver linings to this COVID-19 cloud, but the discussions that we're having about the workplace and how we look to deliver work in the future could be one silver lining, and we shouldn't lose this opportunity.
Great, thank you. Dan?
I think for me, the really interesting thing that I've enjoyed listening to was about the high street and how that might change in the future, and how we might create spaces on the high street for that informal collaboration or different types of work that we hadn't considered. And I wonder actually whether that helps with the sort of broader rebalancing of the economy. So I think there's some really exciting opportunities there.
About you, Yemi?
Yeah, I think a big one for me on the back of what everyone else has said is really about it being clear right now that it's really about people, that FM is really about people. And it's clear that, you know, the show in offices, shopping centers, spaces, cafes, etc. cannot go on without everything that FM does, whether in front or behind the scenes. And I think the future really belongs to those who focus on people and, you know, utilize the, you know, spaces, technology, etc. to actually add value to people. So I think, yeah, it's really about making the most of people intelligence, you know, to drive further benefits going forward. So that's a key one for me.
And last but not least, Robin?
Thank you. Yeah, I think I've got a concern, which is there's a real risk of not harnessing the positives out of this. And I think we've all got to pause and consider how we sort of bake in the positives out of this, so we just don't go back to the norm. And I think we've probably all seen that in sort of our personally and on the news about how quickly we revert back to how we used to do things. And And I think let's harness this. Let's get the benefit from it, so that in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, we say, right, it was awful, but there was a positive out of it. So yeah.
That sounds really good. Yeah, it's time's up, I guess, which is dead on 1 o'clock, which I'm very happy with, because I thought we were going to be a bit more naughty than that. But well done, everybody. I hope that's been useful for everybody. And I think, you know, there's loads more questions to be answered. There's lots more kind of uncertainty still kind of obviously around. And I guess the conversation doesn't stop here. It's just beginning. So, you know, please reach out to us. You can reach out via obviously IDOFM, or individually on LinkedIn and things as well, if you just want to kind of continue that chat. And obviously we are recruiting for the SIGs as well, so if you're interested, just let us know. Thank you for joining us, everybody, and stay safe.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.